US voted to ban abortion. Located.
Global temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exception for rape or incest.
As the world races to decarbonize, there is, of course, much talk about renewable energy, batteries, wind farms, solar panels, etc. But nothing of this really works without strong, connected grids. So this is what we're going to talk about today in this session, the power of the grids. So building this technology is not really only about technology. It's also about policy, it's about planning, and it's about people. That's why I'm so delighted to have these guests here with me in the studio today. We're going to talk about how we ensure that innovation and investment really reach every region also, and not just the wealthiest ones, because that's really also a big topic of this conversation. So, to help us navigate these difficult questions, but also very important questions, we have René, Senior Vice President, Strategy and Sustainability of E.ON. You're all the way down to that side. Wilmar Suárez, your Latin America Energy Analyst at Ember. And we have Rana Adib, Executive Director of REN21. And Lydén, fellow Swede here, Head of International Climate Policy at Germanwatch. So, René, could you please maybe start to set the scene for us and talk about what is really the role of the power grid in the energy transition, and why can't we just swap the fossil generators to biofuel used ones, but the ones that use biofuels?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for the question. I will start maybe with a scenario that we already see today in our grids. E.ON is one of Europe's largest DSO, and in our grids it is where the energy transition is happening, right? In some regions, at peak times, we already see today 700% renewable energy feeding into our grids compared to the peak demand that we have in these hours, especially in summer, where we have a lot of solar feeding into the grid. And 700% is a lot, and that's why we are seeing the energy transition basically as a two-step approach. In stage one, it was about ramping up renewables, which was really important and which was already in some regions a huge success. And now we are entering into the second stage, and it's about integrating renewables into the system. Not only renewables, by the way, but also flexibility options. Biomass is one of the flexibility options that we see. Battery is another one. Demand-side management is a very important one. And we need to integrate everything into the system, and there power grids, special distribution power grids, given the decentralized generation structures, play an important role. Digitalization is key. We are currently building digital twins of our grids in order to simulate better what a new renewable installation or a new flexibility option have as an impact to the grid. And what we want to have is locational signals, so that investors in renewables, investors in flexibility options know where to locate their installations.
So this expansion, of course, needs to be done in a sustainable manner. So how do we do this in practice? How do we make sure that this transition is done in a sustainable way when it comes to all the aspects of sustainability?
But I think efficiency plays a key role here. Efficiency in terms of saving money. There's a lot of potentials. Each kilowatt hour that is curtailed, for example, is a loss. So if we are smarter, if we know better where we need the additional renewable power, we will save a lot of money. And this is an important issue because we need to maintain affordability for maintaining also social acceptance of the energy transition. And the second point is, of course, it is about an efficient usage of resources. Each power line that we don't need is, for us, even as a DSO, it's a saving. It's an important saving because we don't need the resources, we don't need the money, but we also don't need the material. So there's a lot of potential to making the energy transition more efficient and by this more sustainable. And then if we are building our networks, then there's of course our ambition to realize the circular economy as best as we can.
Thank you very much. So, Wilmar, Ember is an energy think tank that has become a household name among climate-minded people. So, if you look across Latin America, what do you see as the main opportunities and also the main bottlenecks here in this region's transition? And how do power grids figure into this equation?
Yeah, and thanks for having me here. Latin America generates about 60% of its electricity from renewables. This is very, very important. More or less 17 from solar and wind. This is above the global average, but it still has a lot of opportunities and also bottlenecks in order to move forward for the clean energy transition. So I will say maybe the main opportunity is how to take advantage of the vast amount of renewable resources that Latin America has. Very good wind speed in Chile, in La Patagonia, in Argentina, even in the north of Colombia, but also very good solar irradiation in most of the countries of the region. So how to take advantage of that resources in order to power the development of the region. Currently, Latam has more than 18 million people without access to electricity. So this is a very good opportunity in order to move forward. What will be the main bottlenecks? I will say there is an outdated regulatory framework, most focus on large generators, centralized generators without incentive for storage, for increasing the transmission capacity, for improving the flexibility of the network. But also there is political instability, and that sends signals to investors that it may be at some point difficult to invest in the region. So this is a very important challenge. Also transmission. There is lack of transmission almost in all the countries in the region, and this is a very huge barrier in order to move forward with renewable energy generation. And just to end here, I will say there is a big opportunity to have interconnection between the countries of South America in order to take advantage of the complementarity of the sources, wind, hydro, and solar, and to decrease the price of the kilowatt hours and to take advantage of those communities who can make some kind of growth, having renewable energy at the center of the development.
Thank you very much. So you recently worked on a report on Chile. So could you share with us the key findings from this report and also maybe what bearings these findings can have on other countries of this region?
Yeah, and Chile is a success case for the energy transition in Latin America and in the world, generating more than 30% of its electricity from renewables and solar and wind, and more than 22% from solar, which is great. 10 years ago, Chile was generating almost 0% from solar. Now it's generating 22%. So it's doing well, mainly based on a stable regulatory and policy framework for the energy sector, attracting investors, multilateral banks, private sector, etc. But now Chile is moving to the second half of its transition, and it's how to take advantage of all that installed capacity. And maybe the main challenge now is curtailment. And why curtailment? Chile is wasting the possibility to use most of its renewable energy generation. During the last 2 years, curtailment multiplied by 4, and in the last year we are talking about 5.6 terawatts hour. This is so much electricity that cannot be used in Chile. What are the reasons for this? Mainly lack of transmission capacity. Most of the solar and mainly solar generation projects are located in the north of the country, while the demand is located in the center and the south. So at many hours in the day, there is not enough capacity in the transmission lines to inject that electricity that could be generated. So it is wasted. Also, there is not enough capacity of storage, which would be an incredible tool in order to take advantage of that electricity. So Chile is working right now very hard on improving and the conditions in order to use of that installed capacity of solar and wind, building 1,400 kilometers of transmission lines, moving forward to a goal of 6 gigawatts of storage. So the lesson here it will be is not only about installing capacity for generating, it's also at the same time working on transmission, working on flexibility, working on demand side response, and also working on storage.
Thank you. So, Rana, turning now to you. For those that are watching and might not be familiar with REN 21, could you please tell us who you are, what you do, and also what perspective you promote in the terms of power grids?
Yeah, thank you very much. So REN 21 is a global network of players, governments, industry, science academia, and NGOs dedicated to building a renewable-based economy for strong, resilient, and fairer societies. And I think this is basically one of the messages that is important. We realize that we have build not only an energy system but also an economy and society around fossil fuel, and today renewable energy needs to be the governing or setting the governing rules. And this is the first approach. Is it's not only about changing the energy system and the grid infrastructure, but it is also about creating the enabling environment and really developing the economy and society around it.
So how can we, if you'd like to elaborate a bit, how can we ensure that grids become really enablers of clean and equitable energy access? I mean, not just barriers, because it's not easy, right?
The first part, I think, is really to change our understanding of what energy security means today and move from something that is a fossil fuel-based part to really an energy service thinking. Ultimately, it is about putting the energy demand and clients at the heart of the energy system. And I think this is also to build on the contributions before. What is really important is that we also have a much better understanding of the energy demand today, but also in the future. We clearly see that there is electrification trends in the transport sector, electrification in the building sector, and very often they are not accounted for, and there are even massive data gaps, and those players do not even sit around the table. So this is the first part. The other one is very clearly that when we are speaking about grids, sometimes we tend to say like we need to deploy more grids, but it is also about how do we basically those grids and the infrastructure elements in the best way. Obviously, it is also about flexibility options, etc. But it is also about really understanding that for having fair and sustainable energy infrastructure, we need affordability. That is also necessary to ensure the societal support. We do need to reduce environmental impacts because any infrastructure does have environmental impact. And this also means to have a good understanding of where distributed generation is happening, where distributed energy demand is happening, and really matching this together. Building on this example of Chile, for instance, and I think this is where we see on the policy side, there is not an alignment, and there has not been an alignment of the deployment of renewables and the deployment of electrification, for instance, or the decarbonization policies on the energy demand side. So I think it's about integrated energy planning and integrated policies.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. So turning now to Petter, for those watching that might not know Germanwatch, could you please tell us what you do and what your perspective is on this topic?
Absolutely. So Germanwatch is an organization that works on environmental sustainability and development together with partners in developing countries especially. One of our key areas is international climate policy, which is why I'm here at COP30.
So Petter, we've heard that undertaking this transformation of the grid will require collaboration on all levels, from governments to civil society and also business. So from your experience, what are the key factors that needs to be in place here to make effective collaboration, cooperation between those different sectors?
Yeah, so local, regional, national and international levels all have distinct roles in this implementation and improvement of grids. For an effective implementation, they need to be aligned and especially cooperate in both directions, from down to up and from up to down. examples are, of course, locally, you can have microgrids. The regional level, you can have cross-border transmission lines, for example. National level is, of course, regulation and financing. And international, which is here in Belém, you have, for example, common goals that will set the direction for actors on all levels. But you would also have real commitments. What we, for example, would like to see here is a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels, which are in the making. And that would be crucial to give that direction that actors on these levels can use.
So let's open up this conversation. Next question actually goes to all of you, and anybody can answer. So who's the quickest? So there's much talk about smart grids, but maybe not everybody really understands what is a smart grid. What does it entail? So who would like to explain?
From our perspective, smart grid means, first of all, transparency about the grid, transparency of what's happening in the grid. Because in the end, as I said, grid stability means also system stability. And for this transparency, we need the data on all voltage levels, actually. Traditionally, the data and the transparency that we have at the TSO level and the transmission level is always better than the data that we have at the DSO level. But we need all the data because, as we heard already, the future of energy generation is distributed, is decentralized. Many millions small solar installations, for example. So we need to know when they feed into the electricity grid. We also need to know how many flexibility options are there, and the smart grid will provide the platform that is necessary for synchronizing all those new participants at a micro level of the electricity grid and to steer their behavior into the right direction. And the right direction is always grid stability, system stability. Without the data, we won't give them any clear signals what grid stability means at the very specific moment of time. This can be saving electricity, this can be injecting electricity, that can be when it comes to bidirectional charging e-vehicles, for example, it can be to take electricity out of the grid for several hours and then give it back to the grid. This is all about flexibility and of flexibility options, and those flexibility options won't work without a smart grid.
Thank you. Peter, you'd like to add?
Yeah, a somewhat wider definition of smart grids in the real life. Those are grids that reach all the people who need electricity and who would only transmit renewable energy.
Thank you. So we're already living in a much warmer world. We know that and also the weather incidents of flooding and storms and hurricanes and whatnot are coming faster and faster and all over the world. So how do we make sure that this smart grid, this new energy system, that is really not just only smart and efficient, but also resilient? Rana.
I think we have seen it just a couple of weeks ago in Jamaica, for instance, where in response to a hurricane, the household that had solar PV on their rooftop were the ones who had electricity service directly and the quickest. We have also seen the same resilience in conflict areas like in Ukraine. And I think this is already one strength renewable energy does bring to resilience. First is an independence of fuel imports. That's the first part. But then also the decentralized nature that really allows to provide energy services to communities and citizens locally. And I think this is very clearly one part is really not seeing, and sometimes we still see that policymakers or also some TSOs see that the decentralization, it brings a messiness that is difficult to handle, but actually it brings exactly the resilience and many opportunities. The other part around resilience, and I think is really, obviously there are technical questions to it. It is about enough grids, it's about enough flexibility, it's the decentralization, but it is also about the people and the stakeholders. What we clearly see is you need to involve citizens in the planning processes. Renewable energy allows citizens to basically be owner of their resilient solution because they can own this, the cities can own it, and we see that resilience is sustainable when citizens are owner of the resilient solution. So that's clearly renewables for resilience is at the heart of any energy system.
Wilmar, René, would you like to add?
Yeah, I will say it is necessary to reform the standards for building the infrastructure, which is necessary now because the infrastructure is going to be exposed to very aggressive climate events. So that will be an important part. And the other part is our power system, our energy system is conditioned by a regulation that was designed for a centralized system. And with this climate event, any event in any specific part of the system could create cascade effects affecting the whole power system. So it is necessary to create some kind of incentive for distributed generation, for flexibility, for storage, in order to try to mitigate the impact of those climate events into the power system.
That's okay. I know what I'm going to ask you anyway. So this is a final question to all of you. So in terms of I have wonderful assistants here. So what message would each one of you like to send to the leaders here at the COP? Because this is a platform that many leaders actually watch. So René, what would you like to send us off with here?
My message would be to deliver on the commitments that the leaders have made in the past. We heard how important electrification is, especially for the transport system, also for the building system, and we don't see much progress on electrification. And I think one of the main reasons for this is that there's no clear signal from the political leaders that electrification, especially of the transport sector and also the building sector, is the key path towards climate neutrality. And we need this clarity. We need clear deliverance on the commitments.
Thank you, René. Wilmar.
Yeah, I will say, and my message it will be that the energy transition is a very important part to achieve the climate goals. And it's not only deploying renewables, but it's also building smart grids and pushing for electrification, which is key for moving forward for the transition. And that will be my message. And this is not only like a climate issue, it's a way to improve the economic conditions and the growth in the global south in order to create jobs and improve the living conditions of people.
Thank you very much, Ronnie.
I would also echo very much on really delivering on the commitments that have already been done, which is phasing out fossil fuel, committing to renewable energy deployment, committing to basic grid infrastructure and storage, committing to energy corridors, but also really linking this in a strategic way to prosperity, to fairness, and to strong and resilient societies. And here, I think from Rent one side, very clearly a message that renewable energy is not only an answer to mitigate CO2 emissions, but to really build climate resilience, economic resilience, and societal resilience in a renewable-based economy.
Thank you, Ronnie. Petra, you get the last say here.
Yeah, I think there are two main areas in this COP where action is needed, and that is the ambition in reducing emissions. We know that the current state is not adequate. The new plans that have been submitted, they don't add up to what is needed. So we need to, from this COP, we need to see the signals for the years ahead, how those targets can be improved, and more especially how the implementation of those targets will take place to overachieve what has been promised so far. The other side is, of course, the means to do so. There are many countries who would like to do this, but who don't have the means. And there are, on their other side, a lot of countries that have resources that they can and should share, and those signals also need to come from here.
Well, thank you very much indeed for sharing your perspectives, and really best of luck with your important work here in Berlin. It's been a hectic week, I'm sure. It's the last day of the first week. And I hope you get some rest tomorrow. It's not easy to rest when you're in the middle of this, but just recharge your batteries, if I may use that word in these conditions. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To pre-record, and it's a pre-record from an energy transition webinar that was recorded ahead of a COP, and it's by our partner AEE, the Association of Energy Engineers. So Joy.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar that is a partnership between the Association of Energy Engineers, otherwise known as AEE, and We Don't Have Time, to discuss some opportunities to drive energy and climate innovation ahead of COP30 that's coming up next month in Brazil.
The vision of AEE is to lead the global energy community to provide solutions for an efficient, an affordable, a reliable, and a sustainable energy future.
We are experiencing, after about 20 years of flat energy growth, increased energy demand, in particular in the power sector. So we are in a new paradigm now, and conversations about how to serve those needs and provide energy services to people is critical, and it's different than it was even just a few short years ago. And I think another question that we have, obviously, as this energy reality is shifting for us, and we are in a mode where we need to expand our energy services faster and also keep affordably front of mind, there is a question about what is the direction of travel for investors when it comes to energy investment. We've always taken the view that we need the broadest portfolio of energy resources, and sustainability as well as affordability and reliability and security need to come together when those decisions are made about what types of technologies and resources a community, a business, or a household might choose to use. But we are seeing strong demand from consumers and the economy across the board for the most modern, affordable, and clean energy resources we can get. And we want to take that message to the world. And the last part is something that we spend most of our time focused on at the COPs. It's really about what are the policy frameworks that will allow the private sector to invest quickly and do it in a manner that will provide the long-term certainty that is required for the types of investments that we're talking about, which in many cases are long-lived, decades-long investments, which also take, in some cases, 5 to 10 years to consider, plan, execute on. So these are long-lived, and we need to have clear and stable policies to underpin those investments. So for COP30, there is a big focus on a number of issues, and adaptation is clearly one of them. How to protect our natural resources is another. But we're, in addition to focusing on how our technologies, products, and services can address those issues, we are looking at the energy transition goals that were adopted at 2 COPs previous to us in Dubai. And they focus on the areas of energy efficiency, doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. They focus on renewable energy deployment goals. More recently, last year in Baku, we added grid and storage. So for us, this is critical because we need to focus on what the solutions are that will help us achieve our goals. And by having these very clear and articulated across all countries will help them as they're putting together their national strategies on energy.
This particular relationship with Al Gore has blossomed into something that allows me to share you some information today that very few people in the world have. When Al Gore was at our conference 2 years ago, he presented a new model. It had been around for a little bit, but basically they were tracking 600 million sources of carbon emissions. And I think that's great, and that, illustrates the problem quite clearly. And they're using AI and a bunch of really cool technology. If you haven't, looked at the TED Talks, you might go do that just to understand the rigor behind it, but it's pretty impressive. And even if they're only 80 or 90% accurate, it's nice to get a third-party view of what's going on this planet, right? Versus hearing it from some company that may be a polluter, right? So there's kind of a little bit of a bias there. But I think even more exciting, what was announced the last couple months is they came out with this thing called plumes, where it's not just about the CO2, but they're actually showing animations of where the pollution is going. And you can see it right here. This is Detroit, and you can kind of see how, and this is all available right now, by the way, but you can see in almost real time, a typical day, where the pollution is going. And I think this is really important because I've struggled for a long time getting people to care about energy efficiency, getting people to care about things. And COP is important, all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, whether you're paying your bills this month, the economy usually takes precedent. But I think seeing that you might be blanketed by pollution from another place, maybe a nearby town, nearby industry, might really get your attention. Because I think cancer, the ability to have PM10, PM2.5, other parts of pollution that actually has been shown quite conclusively. My wife is a medical doctor, so I can kind of back this up also. That stuff causes cancer. And if you're knowing that you're being, getting blanketed by pollution, I think you might actually care. This has a more direct and immediate impact on a human's lifespan. And that's kind of the difference, right? Climate change might impact my kids or my grandkids and so on. But cancer affects me, and it'll affect people, and I think that's a real good motive. So I'm actually quite excited about this thing. It's already had a bigger impact than I could have imagined. I think communities will be more inclined to take action or demand action from political people, and I think this will motivate emission reduction projects because it's all kind of linked, the carbon and the pollution, et cetera. And what's neat about some of these tools, just going back to Climate Trace, is you can kind of see a pretty good map of the world in like I say, real time, and you can even sort by different types of industries, whether it's power, agriculture, et cetera. And I'll just give you an example of how detailed this is. You can go to India, you can go to Europe, you can go to the United States, and you can drill down into specific locations and even identify, see these purple dots down here? Those are all like individual factories that have emissions, okay, that are being tracked. And you can see the trend for multiple years.
So we certainly have a shortage in the workforce. If we couple with that the pending retirement wave, almost 35% of the respondents plan to retire within the next 10 years. And in North America, we're facing a really immediate challenge as about 25% of the workforce plans to retire within the next 5 years. So we have a retiring workforce. We already have a shortage. We have a growing workforce. One of our partners, the Energy Efficiency Movement, released a report, an industrial report, Efficiency Now, earlier this year. And they reported that 48% of the respondents indicated that a skilled worker shortage was hindering energy efficiency implementations. So we see we currently have a shortage. When we look at the energy efficiency workforce, according to IEA and their multiple benefits of energy efficiency report, we have about 10 million people in the energy efficiency jobs globally, which is about 15% of all energy-related jobs. And that number is expected to increase by 5 million by 2030. So certainly with the growth of demand for electricity and energy, with the retirement, with just a shortage of workers, we have a huge opportunity to develop the workforce. So how do we scale the workforce? It would seem to be easy, but I would say it's certainly a challenge, but an opportunity for us. If you ask a real estate agent what's the most important thing with buying a home is location, location, location. I would say when we talk about scaling a workforce, the most important thing is training, training, training. We certainly need to train more and more people. We need funding to facilitate much of that training. And then we also need to ensure confirmation of competencies, knowledge, skills, and abilities so that when a workforce is trained and they're going to be hired to do the work and do the projects, there needs to be some confidence that they have the competencies in order to perform the work. So how do we address training in the workforce? I think one of the first things we have to do is everyone here, our network, we have to promote energy efficiency and energy efficiency careers. These are good paying jobs that make a difference and make an impact and have great career opportunities. So why would someone not want to be involved with energy efficiency? Good pay, make an impact with health, whether it's climate, whether it's carbon, climate change, and certainly financial impact. So we need to promote energy efficiency careers.
I will go back to the numbers. By 2030, apparently, we will need 6.3 to 6.7 trillion annually to decarbonize. These are huge numbers. I always have a hard time to figure them out. Of that, 2.4 trillion must reach emerging and developing countries. In 2023, we reached 1.3 trillion. Early 2024 data suggests that we surpassed 2 trillions, which means we are 1/3 of the way. The problem, again, is not the absence of capital. I think it's the absence of bankable projects and financial frameworks that can challenge it. So, as I said, more than fighting on numbers, I think we have to create the capacity in every country to design, structure, and de-risk investment-ready climate projects, which means expanding technical assistance, empowering local institutions, and integrating climate expertise into national development banks and private banks as well. And then it means to align financial regulation so that the cost of capital reflects real country risk. And here, this is something that I really notice working with Sustainable Energy for All on projects on the ground and on countries that are not so easy. Developing nations are paying up to 2 or 3 times more interest rates of the advanced economies for the same technologies. And many times, this is not their fault, meaning there is not, after the Lehman Brothers crash in 2008, the private sector banking regulations have been tightened up, but at the same time, a lot of the risking tools that are available from multilateral development banks, for example, are not taken into account from private banks when they calculate the cost of capital.
I've been involved in this process since Kyoto, and it's been a struggle to get any recognition of practical implementation type approaches. I mean, we have Article 6 emissions trading, and that I would argue is a practical market, that is a practical pathway, but we've never really articulated technologies in this way and not excluding. Like this is, yes, there is the transition, but this is really kind of a menu of options for all countries to refer to as they're thinking about their climate plans. And then they're setting some quantitative goals for it, to not just think about energy efficiency, think about this kind of a mindset, doubling the global rate of energy efficiency in the near term as your North Star, when you think about how energy efficiency can help your economy.
Are we sometimes in danger of making renewable energy too cheap?
Can renewable energy be too cheap? Well, if it's cheap, utilities should start using it more frequently as a fuel source. That's a logical way for utilities to stay in the game and not be displaced by everyone cutting their cords when they're frustrated with high utility prices.
It's great that we have the focus on energy efficiency. For we've been doing this almost 50 years, and it really wasn't a part of the climate discussion, and now I think it is, and it's great that starting at COP28 we had the UAE consensus, and so now we have a real focus on doubling the rate of energy efficiency.
The politics come and go, but climate change doesn't, and also the creativity. I think that's the other thing that gives me great hope, and maybe I don't like the word hope. It gives me a great sense that we can do this, right? Because I think the creativity is undiminished in terms of what can actually be achieved on our planet. And AI, sensibly managed, could really give us another window through which we can walk to that clean energy and climate safe future.
We have the solutions to turn this around. Now, implementation and action is also a solution or part of it, right? but we're getting there, and we're pushing for it together with our partners.
Certainly, technology is changing, the world's changing, solutions, and we do a lot to keep our members updated. E.ON facilitates 3 or 4 webinars a month. I know earlier this week we did one on heat pumps, a series of that, had over 600 people. So we're doing continual education and training for our members. Eric leads our CEM program. This year we added decarbonization and greenhouse gas accounting. Next year, I think we'll be adding AI to the CEM. Is that correct? And so we need to stay current with what we're doing and what we're teaching so that the engineers have the latest and the greatest solutions and technologies, along with all the solutions that are proven and have not really changed for really decades.